Jonathan writes in, this idea that the title is defended too much is such bullshit. I don't know how anybody can believe that. When was the last title match on live TV? When was the last title switch on live TV? Non-Money in the Bank. There hasn't been one in years. So how can you honestly say once a month is too much? It's absurd to think that an absentee champion is good. It sucks for people who buy tickets to TV and house shows, and it sucks for people who want to watch B pay-per-views. You have to be naive to buy that a title defense once a month is too much. If anything, it isn't defended enough. Strange thing is, the U.S. title hasn't been defended in months as of right now. It must be the most prestigious title on the planet using this logic. It's typical favoritism nonsense. Dean Ambrose / Sheamus does not defend a title. People clamor about it being worthless, but when the plan is for Lesnar to hold the belt for months and not defend it, somehow it's a great idea. First of all, do yourself a favor and buy a hearing aid, because I don't ever remember ranting about how the title is defended too much. Okay? It's true. I've said that I would be okay with it not being defended on every single pay-per-view. Okay? It's happened before. Shawn Michaels was the champion in 1996 and had a great match with Mankind at Mind Games, and then the very next month at Buried Alive, Undertaker and Mankind headlined, and Michaels was doing commentary for the number one contenders match with Vader and Sid, which built to his next title defense at Survivor Series. Guess what? The world didn't end. Okay, they took their time to build a title match that people might actually care about seeing, and had some history to it with Shawn and Sid being friends. So I just throw that out there as an example. Okay? Now, to your point about how Sheamus and Dean Ambrose don't defend their U.S. title for weeks and how the titles mean shit, let me school you, son. Okay? There's a big difference between being the WWE World Heavyweight Champion and being the Intercontinental Champion or being the United States Champion. It wasn't always that way, okay? Those titles used to mean a hell of a lot more than they do now. There was actually a time when the U.S. title back in the old NWA days was almost on par with being the world champion. And a lot of top guys held the belt. No top guys are holding the U.S. or Intercontinental titles today. It just doesn't happen. Back then, Dusty Rhodes would hold it. Ric Flair held it. Okay, so that was a bygone era. There's a big difference now, today, between the world title and the secondary titles. Those titles are secondary by nature, which means by their very nature, they should be defended more. Okay, there are far more mid-card wrestlers on that roster than main eventers. There's only so many main event spots to go around. Hell of a lot more mid-carders than main eventers on the WWE roster. That spot should be reserved for the most elite in the company. Everyone else is just fighting for second place. If you have a secondary title that's defended once every 3 months, nobody new gets elevated. In theory, of course. Okay, but here's the other flaw in your logic. Since you love painting with such a broad brush, WWE has done a horrendous job of making their champions, and then by association their titles, mean anything because of the way they treat their secondary champion. Sheamus may be the exception because he's still mostly protected. Most of the guys who hold the Intercontinental or the U.S. titles are not protected the way that Sheamus is. They routinely lose non-title matches on TV, and that's okay if the person who beats the champion then becomes the number one contender for that title. But how often does that actually happen? I joked about it earlier with the Diva stuff. Natalya now has 2 wins over the champion. Eva Marie had 2 wins over AJ back when she was the champion. Are they going to add them to the match at Night of Champions and make it a 4-way? I hope they do, because it's the only thing that makes sense. But watch them turn around and have another singles match between Paige and AJ, which is great, but it makes no sense. Because the champion got pinned by somebody else twice on TV or made to submit. Since Paige tapped out to the sharpshooter when Natalya put her in it, in theory, they should be number one contenders for the titles. But so often, they ignore it. They ignore it. It's lazy storytelling, or they think we're stupid. I don't know. Take your pick. But we see that countless times. I could count on one hand how often it actually happens that way, where the champion loses a non-title match on TV, and that person then goes on to get a title match on pay-per-view. Or even on TV. So they lose, and they lose, and they lose, and soon enough, people look at them as losers. Losers who happen to carry around a belt. That's not how you make your title seem important. Your champion should look strong. So now that I shot down your argument there, let's talk about the WWE title and Brock Lesnar. You can't fathom why people would support an absentee champion who only defends every few months. Brock Lesnar happens to be the WWE champion right now. Okay? He came from the UFC. Do you know how many times a champion defends their title in UFC? Once every few months. Sometimes a little bit longer. Okay? I'm not advocating that WWE turn into UFC. What I'm saying is, that's how it works there, and it hasn't hurt their pay-per-view business. WWE's pay-per-view business had declined so much and sucked so bad, they decided it was worth the risk to just put them all on the network to help make the network a success at the expense of cannibalizing their entire pay-per-view business. You think if their pay-per-views were still pulling 400,000, 500,000, 600,000 buys a month, or every few months they would have had the balls to do that? I don't see too many people complaining that John Jones doesn't defend his title once a month. Brock Lesnar has been booked as this unstoppable monster. And if they continue to book him this way, and at the same time they start building up some new challengers for the title, like some of those names I discussed earlier, it'll mean that much more when Brock returns to defend his title. You're having a conniption fit because you're used to things being a certain way. You dislike change. I get that. I don't like change either. The title does not have to be defended at every house show. The title does not have to be defended on every pay-per-view. If you have other top guys who can carry the load and give people matches they want to see, like what we have now with Seth Rollins and Dean Ambrose. Now, they need more than just those two guys. They've done a poor job of building up other people on the roster, like Cesaro and other people, but that's what they need to do. You can easily headline that Hell in a Cell pay-per-view in October with Rollins versus Ambrose inside the cell. And I'm just spitballing here, okay? Roman Reigns, maybe build up something against Bray Wyatt when his feud with Jericho runs its course. John Cena against somebody new like a Rusev. If Brock comes back and defends the title at Survivor Series, and then again at the Rumble and again at Mania, the world will not end. Business will not die. But I guarantee you, those Brock Lesnar title defenses, those matches are going to be must-see TV when they happen. So eat your sour grapes and just relax.